After dealing with the walls and the parts, now we have to prepare technical documents that we call callouts. So the callouts are small pieces of section. So you see that there's a callout tool here, and then you can place these callouts in the section, and then we can just improve the quality of those details once we have the parts. But now we have to add textures, colors, and yeah, we have to improve the quality of those details. So the first thing, we have to work with the section, and now that we have the basement, there's a tiny window here on the basement wall, and we have to add a floor to the basement with different layers, and then we have to start including different colors and different materials. And something else that we have to do, we have to increase the quality, the thermal performance of the building by preventing thermal breaches from happening. So we have to make sure that the thermal insulation is continuous. So when we are creating a floor or another detail for a wall, then we have to make sure that we have thermal insulation, continuous thermal insulation around the envelope of the building. So the first thing, we're going to start with a basement floor. So I have selected floor structure, and this is going to be concrete cast in place. And the thickness is 8 inches. And this is a structural element. And now we're going to insert different parts. Okay, so we are going to insert different materials. And what do we need? We have the concrete slab. Then we are going to need aggregates underneath the concrete slab. And then we are going to have thermal insulation because it's the basement floor. And then the flooring. This is what we're going to do here. I'm creating new layers here. Aggregates underneath or stone. Let me see what we have. Okay, I'm creating air, and then I will work with textures in the detail, because this is what we have to do. We have to include aggregates in the basement slab. The first layer that separates the slab from the floor are aggregates, those tiny stones. You see, those are aggregates, and then above those aggregates we start working with the concrete cast in place. We go back to Revit now, and this is the concrete cast in place. That layer is rigid insulation, and we need another layer, the finish, and we are going to use oak, or a flooring made of wood. So we have here different 1 foot for the aggregates, 8 inches, 4 inches, and ½ inch for the flooring. So make sure that we have this floor there, and then we have to build the floor. And now there's a floor, but the position is not the right one. So we need an offset. Okay, so we need a height offset, and if it's a 2 6-foot floor, so we have to move it 2 feet up. So let's change this height offset, 2 feet, 2.5, sorry, and that's it. And now those are different layers, but we have to create parts. So now we have created parts. I'm going to highlight the parts, and with the shape handles, I'm going to drag different layers of the floor there. So why do we have this gap here? Well, this part will be the aggregates, so we will fill this with texture, with stones. This is the concrete cast in place, but the concrete slab doesn't get to the concrete wall because we need a joint, because if it expands, if this slab expands, it may affect that wall. So we need an elastic joint here made of rubber or another tiny piece of thermal insulation, so that if this slab expands in this direction, it doesn't affect the structural wall here. Okay, so that's why I have dragged all the layers up to this wall. At the concrete slab, there will be a joint here, and we will define that material in the detail. That's the concrete wall. And on next video, we will continue to develop this. We are working in 3D, so that means that every section I'm taking in this building, we will have the same components here, the same materials. We can do that in 3D, and that's a difference that we have to understand. Sometimes we will work in 2D dimensions, but in this exercise we're working with 3D. Well, here we have all the layers again. Well, I have just decided that I'm going to, we have the core boundary, so the structural element, the concrete. If we have concrete, usually it's within these two core boundary, and then everything that it's not structural, it's either underneath the core boundary or above the core boundary. So we have the rigid insulation, the oak flooring above the core boundary. We click OK, and this is it. This is the gap that we're going to fill with a different material. This is the concrete wall. This is the concrete slab. And now I want you to understand the waterproof elements that we have in retaining walls. Okay, so those are pictures of retaining walls. You see that we have to dig a trench, and then we have to fill this trench first. We have to use the waterproof layers here on the wall, and then we have to fill that trench with again with aggregates. And I'm going to show you different parts of different layers that make up the waterproof of a retaining wall. We have the concrete retaining wall here. So the first thing is a painting. So this is a waterproof painting made of asphalt or something like that. But that's not enough, because the painting, it's waterproof but can be damaged because of, I don't know, stones or sand or whatever. So we need to protect this with another layer. I'm going to show you that layer. Okay, so those guys are painting that wall with a waterproof layer, but then we have to protect this with this element. Okay, so it's like a rigid plastic element that protects the painting. We have different examples here. Yeah, like this. You see that we have this layer protecting this orange, which is the waterproof painting, and then we fill that trench with aggregates. Here we have another detail, and this is, yeah, you see that there's concrete, the painting, and then the layer. Here we have a detail, gravel, retaining wall, and this protection sheet of board is what we have to add here. It's usually made of PVC. Yeah, that's that's the element that protects the painting. Okay, let's go back to the Revit file, and we're going to build this waterproof protection in a 3D, and we're going to use the option component model in place, and make sure what section we are working with, and we have to select the category topography, yeah, because it has to do with the soil. We have to work with extrusion, select grid 2, and just start tracing the materials or the element that we are going to. Okay, so that would be the first component, which is the soil itself, the compact soil. Then you go to the 3D, and now we have this object, we drag it, and we have a solid layer of soil. Then we go back to the section, and then we need, first we need a pipe, a drainage pipe, but the drainage pipe has to be held by, select pipe accessories, or yeah, I think, or pipe accessories, okay. And then with extrusion, select grid 2 again, and we're going to build something that holds the drain. Now a circle, and that's the size of the drain that will get rid of the water that it's filtered there. 3 inches, it's enough. And now we have to trim. No, the other way around. No. Okay. Make sure that it's a closed loop and finish. And now go back to the 3D, and then you can select and drag it. There you go. So that's an element that holds the drain to prevent the drainage pipe from moving. Now we need a drainage pipe, which is a circle. So we create another component, model in place, another pipe. And now we need extrusion, grid 2, circle. We need an auxiliary line because we need a center. So that's the circle. Then remove the auxiliary line and go back to the 3D view. And we have this. Finish. So we have the soil, we have something that holds the pipe, we have the pipe itself, and now we need the waterproof layer there, or at least we need to fill this with the aggregates. And the waterproof layer, probably it's something that it's so small that it's not worth doing it with 3D. So we are going to work with the 2D option. So let's do this. And now in the 3D, we can drag it. So those are the layers that we have in 3D. Those are 3D objects. So every section that we get, we will have the same layers, and then we will improve the detail in 2D. But at least having all these materials in 3D, I think it's worth having it. The drainage, all the water that is filtered through those aggregates will be collected in this drainage, and then we will get rid of it. If I work with this section box, yeah, because we want to work just with this corner of the building to define it. And yeah, so another thing that we have to fix is the connection between the roof and the wall here. Okay, let's continue with this because now we have thermal insulation on the basement, but we need to continue the thermal insulation inside the basement wall. And then we will continue the thermal insulation in this wall. So there is no gap without thermal insulation. We will move the thermal insulation from this part all the way up, and then top down here all the way this. So we will close this gap with thermal insulation here and thermal insulation there. But first we need to add more layers to this basement wall. So let's do it. This is the thermal insulation on the floor, and then we need to add more layers there. What layers? Well, first we have the only layer that we had was the concrete cast in place, and then out of the core boundary we're going to add thermal insulation, rigid, and this is basement, so we need 4 inches, might be enough. Then another layer that is going to be thermal air layer, and this is going to be air. Well, it's rigid insulation, but it's going to be air, 2 inches. And then the final layer is the finish. We can finish the gypsum board. And this is a 1/2 inch. So we click OK, and now we have all these layers on this wall. Well, the first thing you see that we have increased the thickness of the wall, and for some reason, it's too thick, so we have to move it leftwards. Move it this way. Okay, so we line up the concrete wall and the layers that we have created with the component model in place. And now we have to divide this into parts. We have to create parts. Well, first, as I told you, we need to change the this. We have 4 inches of rigid insulation, and this has to be air. There you go. So this is air, and then we have the gypsum board. So click OK. And now we have to divide this, or we have to create parts. Select the wall, because we're going to move those parts. Yeah, we're going to fix that corner. So create parts. And once we have the parts there, we can work with the shape handles and move them up. Finally, this is the thermal insulation. This is the air gap. This is the gypsum board. And now that thermal insulation goes up to the floor slab, then we have to move this thermal insulation down, yeah, so that we close the gap without thermal insulation. So select this part, shape handles, and then move it down. There you go, up to this point. So we don't have a thermal breach there. So we don't have a part of this retaining wall without the thermal insulation. And then we select this layer. Yeah, so we have to move it down. So this is the thermal insulation, and this is the part. As you can see, we have to select the rest of the parts, show the shape handles, and then we have to move all of them down. There you go. So now we have all the 3D components. We have to keep working on that because there are still things that we have to fix. But we will do that in 2D when we're working on the call out. But in the 3D, we have all the layers that we need. We need something structural, we need the thermal insulation, and we need the finish, and everything's there.